Hello, just testing my audio. Does anyone hear me?
I can hear you, Jeff. It's Kelly.
Fantastic, thank you. By the way, I only have half an hour here, unfortunately.
Well, it might be real fast.
Okay, fast is good.
Kevin, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. There's three of us. And Andrew. John should be here shortly. Well, well, it's 11 o'clock. John should be here. I'm not so perky. I have COVID right now. So
Oh,
right
my.
after this, I'm going to go to sleep.
When did you come down with it?
Saturday.
Oh,
Just a mild case, but I have like a sleeping disease. I was going to work. I worked an hour yesterday. I went to sleep and I woke up like at 5 or 6.
Wow.
Sleeping's good. Other than
yeah.
that, I feel just slow. Hi, John.
Hey,
Do you know if Pete Nelson is coming, John?
I know that he accepted the meeting, but I've not spoken with him today.
Jeff McKim only has 30 minutes, but I told him I really don't know if anyone else is coming, and it may be a very short meeting.
Yeah, I've not heard from anybody with cutters either.
And you
Do
said
we-
Penny. Oh, go on.
Well, I was just curious, have they put together any sort of new proposal for us?
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
There's Pete.
Okay.
Kind of. Hi, Pete.
Hey guys,
If we can just wait a few more minutes to see if Sophia or Mike come, because that would be real important. Mike has met with John and I, or I can't remember if John was at the last meeting.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
I don't want to speak for Mike, but he's been also meeting with Bloomington Parks and Recreation. And Bloomington Parks and Recreation Director Paula has met with us to tell us what was said. So I was hoping Mike was here so he could, it's his proposal, and it's not exactly a proposal. It's more or less, I'm not even sure how to describe it, John.
There was a lot of detail, but also a lot of things to consider. But I think we had discussed that in our last committee meeting, that once we had a proposal or an idea from cutters, then we would start hashing out the details of any sort of plan that we put together. So that's kind of where we left it.
So it has been a long time since I've been in one of these meetings, and I've lost a lot of brain cells since then. Can somebody remind me of what the total cost of kind of the most desirable or the most achievable proposal is? I just forgot. I remember there was, lights and which fields to do. There are a bunch of options, but what's the bottom line, I guess?
John, do you have that?
I
don't
can
have.
try to find it.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Sophia.
Hi.
I don't know if
Mike?
this, I feel like my memory
Hello.
may be serving me correct, but I thought it was about $1 million a field with lights and everything.
Yeah, that's to guess without looking at it. That's fairly close.
I'd say it's a little bit higher than that.
Probably
You're
a
probably
little
talking
higher.
about 825,000 to $1 million for a field. as far as the turf is, are we talking about artificial turf?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the lights are probably going to be another 200 and some odd $1,000, I would imagine.
we do have that one page. We'll find it and send it back out. And remember, those are
Okay.
2020 prices.
Sure.
I think there was also the caveat that the more fields that we do at a time, the more cost effective that was.
Yep.
So
Correct.
2 better than 1, 4 better than 3, 2.
Correct. And basically, Mike, we were just waiting for you because I know you had some proposals or you would like to share some ideas with the
Well,
group.
Sure. I've talked to a company called Field Turf. We had their construction manager was out here. That was probably in November or December, if I remember correctly, maybe even January. I'm not exactly sure. And then I also met with Blake Centers, who's their regional sales manager, about the process and what we needed to do. And then I've also talked on the phone with the company or the bank that does financing for a lot of their projects. And so I've talked to, or we and I have talked to, I guess, the 3 principal groups, at least within Field Turf. And I wanted to get an idea, and from there, we're talking somewhere around, like I said before, 820,000 up to a million, or maybe a little bit more, depending upon the exact size of the fields that you want to put together. And I basically had given them an estimate, field size very similar to the fields that we have at Karst. And that number came out to a little over $800,000 for a field. It'll probably go down some if you add an additional field to that. And so what I did was I put together a plan basically for our club's capital campaign, in looking at if we were to go ahead and finance the whole thing, and that is to upgrade all of the fields and then install artificial turf on at least 4 fields at Karst. Okay. And I looked at a plan that would carry us through for 33 years through 2056. So, and that looks at 3 iterations of artificial turf. That looks at the first year, and then 13 years later doing it again, 13 years after that doing it again. And the total cost for that was around right at $24 million over that period of time. And that includes upgrading all of the other fields for drainage, irrigation, and LED lights, using basically the estimates that the engineering firm had put together for Parks Department. That's been 4 years ago now, isn't it? Kelly and John?
It's been a while. Yeah. 2020, I think.
So, and then the thing that I looked at with the artificial turf is that when you replace it, the cost is not nearly as high, primarily because you don't have the construction cost associated with it. All you have is to take out the old turf, put in the new turf, and you're looking at substantially lower figure. I left the numbers as I had originally put them, that they would basically be the same. I have not gone back and redone that project proposal. Probably will. Now, one of the things that we needed to do is we would need to decide where we would want to start. And Kelly, you had indicated earlier that you would prefer to start with fields 9 through 12. Is that still the case?
For artificial turf?
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest bang for your buck will be to put them back there. It's the largest area. We could rotate the fields better. The only bad downside is that it doesn't have lights. Doesn't have light poles, LED, all that stuff. But then again, we haven't made the investment of drainage and irrigation. So we don't have to worry about, we just put $250,000 of that in and then tear that right back out.
Well, they'll put in the drainage.
Well, I mean, like, if you decide not to do artificial on those backfields and use
Oh,
it,
okay,
and with
yeah.
drainage and irrigation,
Well, they're your fields, so we'd have to agree on which fields we're going to start with, and I'm sure that 5 people will give you 5 different opinions, but the one that really counts is what the county wants to do. So, you know, that's what I need to know. One of the things that Field Turf needs, and I'm sure any other company that installs artificial surfaces, is that we need to know the exact size of that area out there so that we can have them put together a good, solid cost estimate. What I've given them up till now has basically been square footage, as I've either looked at the other fields or measured off. So we would need a more, and I think I'd asked you sometime after I talked to, I think it was Blake Centers, who was the regional sales manager, if you had some sort of an engineering plot for 9 through 12, do you?
well, we would have to probably buy that service from Bledsoe, Riggert, Cooper, James, and that would be up to the park board. And we can come with our recommendation if this is what the committee would like. Kevin, do you have an opinion on this? Because if we need to have better numbers, we need to have better engineering.
Yeah, I think we need to come in with some numbers and have the discussion with the park board and maybe even the commissioners about the overall proposal for what sounds like a very, very long-term agreement with Cutters on regarding the fields and expenses and so forth. And assuming that those boards think that these ideas are workable, we'll need to go back and refine the numbers. But I think right now, I wouldn't call them ballpark figures, but the figures that Mike has is probably enough to start the discussion process going. Because there's no sense spending weeks or months nailing down the exact figures and find out that the park board or the commissioners are not willing to enter into such a long-term agreement. And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would be expecting that, I assume.
I would expect something, yeah, because we're not about to invest that kind of money without having some sort of formal agreement.
I would assume
And-
your bank would probably insist on the same thing.
You better believe it.
Right.
Or they would. So we need to understand what type of relationship that would be, and then everybody has to get to the point where they feel comfortable with it. Okay.
Sure.
Well,
I think having a well articulated proposal is more important than having exact numbers in this case. And so here again, I'm curious how many companies actually do such artificial turf installations.
there's quite a variety of them.
Yeah, and so somewhere down the road, it may make sense to get multiple proposals.
Yes.
But not necessarily at this point. I think we need to find out if we can put together a viable proposal for acceptance by the county, and then work on refining the numbers.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I had talked about doing too was there are a few sites that I would like to visit. One in particular is in Rantoul, Illinois. It's a brand new facility. It's probably less than a year old. They put in 8 full-size soccer fields and other ones that are smaller in variety. as well as softball and baseball fields, all with artificial turf. Not sure which company that they used, but I'm interested in how they went about financing it, et cetera, and how successful they've been in terms of their fundraising and sponsor efforts. And that's not all that far away. We're talking about just north of Champaign, Illinois. So, and that was something I had talked to Kelly about and to Sophia about possibly going over there and taking a look at that particular project and talking to their folks. And that was kind of a private government type of thing, just like we're talking about. So I'm interested in seeing how they did that and what type of success they're having so far. And I'd like to take a look at a few other projects as well. So I'm going to look from the Cutter standpoint, so we have a better understanding of what we would like to have, the other thing I'm interested in is if the timeline that I put together is feasible based upon what other projects have done, and then obviously the big one for us from the Cutter standpoint is the fundraising piece. And I said right at $24 million over a 33-year period of time. That's still a lot of money. So got to figure out how to do that. And then I guess the other thing over time is that will the county be able to put any money in towards the project as well? And you folks are in a better position to answer that question than I am.
Well, let me on the county's money. Let me just bring up. I've mentioned the possibility of food and beverage tax before, and I just want to make everything really clear that a lot of people would have to agree to be able to do that. So don't nobody take this as a promise or anything like that. It's just,
don't worry, not.
we already have collected just in the county's portion alone almost $1 million, actually probably by now over $1 million that we have just sitting in the bank. That is statutorily earmarked for basically tourism and related economic development purposes. Personally, I really like the idea of spending that on the soccer fields. That's what I told, back when we passed that tax. I told my constituents, and I made public comments at the time that one of the things that I thought the county could use the money for was the soccer fields. And so I would feel really good about fulfilling that promise and committing some food and beverage tax, substantial amount of food and beverage tax to that project. But like I said, I'm only one person. There is another counselor on the line here who's also on one of the committees that makes those sorts of decisions. And so I don't know if Cheryl wants to make any comments, but that at least could add some county commitment. And there may be other sources as well.
Well, Jeff, I'm not sure. I know I mentioned this to Kelly and John and how much anybody else has followed, but Senate Bill 245 recently passed, which is, let me pull up the exact language of it, but it basically puts into effect a sports tourism fund that will be garnered through the state through IODD or IDDC. It's a statewide sports and tourism bid fund that establishes a funding purpose for organizing and holding sporting events. Basically, with Team Indiana, we had done we had a small grant committee in the past for around $100,000 a year to use throughout the state on different sporting events. This new fund would grow substantially if the funding is what Indy Sports Corp proposes. And the caveat that goes along with it is that as it stands currently, the funds cannot be used for capital improvement, whereas this new fund, those funds would be allowed for capital improvement for things like this. And we're talking that this, and this is we don't know yet, but the current $100,000 grant could go to somewhere upwards of over $1 million a year for the state. So, I mean, it's not enough to completely, you know, do some huge thing with our project, but it could be a kind of a good opportunity to get a couple $100,000 for a seating event. So,
Okay, well, that's good to know. I hadn't been following that particular bill.
yeah,
I think that if we could decide on what fields we'd like to do what with, then that would go a long ways towards deciding how we might spend money if money were available. For example, with what Jeff just was talking about, is that if any of that money in the food and beverage tax area could be used on renovation of fields, we could use that money to look at drainage issues on fields, and that would begin to solve some problems there. And I've got 3 years before we actually, from a capital improvement standpoint, before we actually even spend any money. For 3 years, we're going to try to accumulate as much money as possible through our capital campaign in order to start a project. And depending upon the amount will dictate exactly what it is that we do, you know. And if we were fortunate enough to get the kind of money that we were talking about for artificial turf, or we're able to get a good financing deal, then we might be able to look at what we would do as far as artificial turf is concerned. But the money that Jeff is talking about certainly would go a long ways towards some of the other improvements, because we're not talking about doing all of the fields with artificial turf. We're talking about a portion of them. And that means then that any other monies could be used towards other renovation projects as far as the facility is concerned, whether it's, and obviously the one that's the most important, in my opinion, is drainage.
and I think, Mike, the one thing that I will make sure that, I know that Jeff has mentioned it, and I know as far as the Senate Bill 245 goes, that it is the food and beverage tax and the Senate bill, those funds are earmarked for tourism, you know, and economic development. So the one, I know this is a huge project for Cutters, and you guys are the day-to-day for sure users, but the other thing we would want to think about is how it would affect and how we can bring in more tournaments because of this, and out of town guests because of these type of things as well. It's something to just keep in the back of our minds, right?
Yeah. Keep in the back of your mind this, that we're not going to bring in many tournaments unless we're able to correct issues that we have with our fields right now.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly.
So that means is that we need, if we're serious about bringing in events, and I would like to see us bring in events, and I'd like to see us bring in a multitude of events, not just soccer, but lacrosse. There's all kinds of things that we could do on the fields, but we need the kind of fields that are going to be able to, one, stand up to the type of traffic that events bring in, okay? And that's both spectators as well as players. And some sports like lacrosse put a lot more wear in a short period of time on areas, and that's where artificial turf certainly would be nice. Also, you know, if we recognize that we're not going to be able to put artificial turf on every single one of the fields, then the next key issue, in my opinion, is to make sure that we can get water off the fields as quickly as possible. And that's where drainage comes in. And, you know, we have one field at Karst that really, really drains well, and that's field number 8. And the reason that drains well is that there was a lot of extra work put into putting in a very good drainage system. And it works well, other than the fact that maybe during the summertime when it's really, really hot and all the water drains out of the soil, then you got to turn on the irrigation, right, Kelly?
It drains so well that we have to water more, you're correct.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
let me
I'm
just
sorry.
make sure I understand. Are you basically saying, though, that if, regardless of a decision to put in artificial turf, that investing in the drainage would be a benefit to
Oh, yeah.
soccer programs here?
Yeah.
And do Kelly and
that's-
John, you guys agree with that? I mean, is that an important, because I've heard that often, that the drainage is a real problem.
It is a problem. I guess it just depends how much money you have. You know, do you want to put your money first into drainage and irrigation or to artificial turf? Because I don't know where we can do
Can I
both
get on
right
your
now.
Wi-Fi? Can I get on your Wi-Fi?
You said go on your phone.
Oh.
It should work.
We can hear you, Cheryl.
You're
Ah,
unmuted, Cheryl. I want to jump into, I had a really good
There it is.
conversation with Cassandra Cobble, who was doing interviews of Cutter's board members.
Should be
And
on.
she focuses on youth sports side of, well, I'm going to get it wrong, so I'm not going to attempt, but she offered to connect us with the youth sports and tourism side of her colleagues who do this kind of research. I think if nothing else, they might be advisory, and she said she was willing to connect them to us. So I don't know if like a subgroup out of this group would be able to have a brief Zoom conversation. I'm happy to set that up. And I guess just kind of a little bit more context, it would be for, as she explained it in the way I understood, it would be, the benefit would be we would see the successes as well as perhaps the areas to not go, the paths to not go down, just based on their expertise and their studying of these different communities that are doing capital improvements or just building new facilities in general. Has anyone talked with her or her colleagues?
I have.
She's at IU. She does, I could look it up again real quick, but I just wanted to toss that before I forgot.
Okay.
Oh, no, more information is always better. I was going to ask Kevin, do you think the next step is to talk to the park board to get maybe a concept, because it's hard to go to the commissioners without a concept? Or what
Right.
we're thinking.
I think it's gonna take a while to put together the type of presentation that we are gonna need to get a full green light on this project. But I do think in the meantime, if we can get an outline of, Mike, what you're proposing, that we can kind of circulate to key people like Jeff and a few, of the decision makers, and get some reaction, and we can give you feedback on that. Then from there, we can work on a more refined proposal. But I do think we need to all be on the same page as to where we're going. And I think having something in writing, even an outline, will help us do that. And from that, we can build upon it and identify who else we need to talk to, what facilities we ought to visit, and to address issues that appear to be unresolved. And so
Because
that would
I
be
did-
my suggestion.
Because I didn't know, like, because I'm assuming the commissioners and the council would want to make sure that the park board is at least on board with the concept. Because Jeff, I don't know how to go about the food and beverage tax ask, and Pete, I don't know the timeline of that grant.
Senate Bill 240, it'll go into the next budget session, which I think is July, is when they'd find out what kind of funding we would go into it. I will say that as a internal group, I'm on the advisory committee for Team Indiana as well. And we have already kind of said that in this first year with this new funding source, that we would likely stay away from capital improvement and show the state that we can use that money to bolster bigger events versus improving facilities. But so I think we're still a year or two away from being able to use that funding source for capital improvement.
That's
Looks
good.
like Cheryl's got a comment too.
Hi there. I'm sorry I wasn't able to connect my audio until just now, but I'm glad I could listen in at this meeting. And I like the direction you are going in figuring out a proposal that the park board could consider, and then the commissioners. I just wanted to weigh in on food and beverage funding as a possibility for improvements of the soccer fields. And that is, it would really be best if this was one-time funding needs, such as equipment or preparation of the field to receive the turf. In any case, you understand that it's food and beverage tax is not well set up for continuing funding, but good for one-time needs.
Drainage would count as that, wouldn't it? Would you
Yes, it-
consider, yeah, drainage?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Okay,
Mike?
I'll go ahead and put together a basic proposal. It will more or less mirror what I've already put together. It's something that I presented to our board so that they would have an idea of the type of money that we're talking about over this period of time. And I put it together as something I wanted them to be aware that if we funded the entire thing, and I'm talking about we being Cutter Soccer Club, what the total amount of money would be, and in what increments that money would have to be raised, and what efforts it would support. Okay. Now, obviously, we would be looking at other funding sources as well. I know Sophia has talked in the past about grants and other types of opportunities, and so have many of the rest of you. And so we would obviously be looking at those possibilities as well. And any support then that the county can provide to this particular effort would certainly be welcome as well. But I wanted to look at it from a standalone standpoint and us going alone doing it so that I have a good idea of the amount of money that we're talking about and over what period of time we would need to do it. And I guess the thing that's very important as far as I'm concerned is on all of these efforts is that even if you take a look at, if we were to replace for those fields that would remain natural grass, to replace the drainage and irrigation, those kinds of things, I have a plan that looks at replacing those things somewhere down the line, 30, maybe 35 years or 40 years, depending upon what is an appropriate time frame to replace those things again. Because apparently what's been done is the fields were built with no looking forward as far as the future is concerned and having money available to replace those systems once they wear out. And we all know that they do that. And that's what the case is that we have now. So I'm looking at a plan, which is why I look so many years down the road that starts replacing those things even after they've been replaced, if we do it now in the next 10 years.
And I know, Mike, you also have, what Cutters expects in return, for this effort too. That should be out there so no one's, is surprised.
Yep, for sure.
Well, getting back to Kelly's question to me about, reporting to the park board, I would envision once we got this outline from you, Mike, that we would just give a report to the park board as to where this is going, entertain questions and comments, but take no action at this time, but to keep the park board informed as the direction we're going and make sure that there aren't objections or confusion as to how this is proceeding. But we're just not ready for any kind of votes yet. And so I don't want to make it formal, but I do want to keep them in the loop.
Okay. So, so the Parks Board still would be involved at some point from a approval standpoint?
In my view, they would be, in that, they're, even though they don't own the park, they are responsible for managing the facilities and
Okay.
and activities
Right.
in the park.
Okay. So the agreement that, whatever agreement that we make, is the agreement going to be with Monroe County, Monroe County government, Monroe County Parks Board, Monroe County Parks and Recreation, or all of the above? What's it going to be?
I'm going to let the current legal department answer to that. It'll probably involve the park board and the commissioners, but the legal department will have to determine who specifically signs off and how, and that can be worked out down the road. But to me, the two critical boards are the park board and the board of commissioners. And depending on your funding sources, the county council may be involved, but I don't know that they would have to directly sign off on the agreement.
Okay.
Cheryl, did you say something?
Nope,
Okay.
that's correct.
And as
Okay.
county legal, I can look into what parties need to be a part of the agreement.
Oh, this is Molly. She's the new
Hi.
county attorney assigned to the Parks Department.
Hi, Molly.
Hi.
Can you twist those laws?
They didn't teach us that in law school,
They
but
didn't? Isn't that what lawyers really do, though?
It's interpretation, Mike.
Oh, is it interpretation? Okay. All right. All right.
So I think we can work with Mike, and Kevin will get a report hopefully for the June meeting for the park board to keep them in the loop to see if, we're going on the right track. Is that the gist of it, you think?
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah,
To
that's
Kevin.
why I proposed.
Okay. And Sophia, we can get a hold of you. You said you would like to maybe meet with, her name's Cassandra.
Well, yeah, she's the one who interviewed me for her research, but she would connect us with her colleagues who are more focused on the tourism of youth sports.
Oh, okay. I'm sure that, and we'll do something with that too. So we'll keep everyone in the loop. And does anyone have anything else for today's meeting? Jeff had to go to work.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay.
Somebody has to pay the bills.
Jeff has to go to work now. Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
I think I have one quick thing to add. I think I'm just looking through the state statute. It looks like the Parks Board is an advisory entity. So I think ultimately, and I know Molly, and hello, nice to virtually meet you. I believe any sort of agreement would have to be with with Monroe County local government itself, kind of like a PPP. It looks like the board itself is advisory and makes recommendations to commissioners and council.
That's more descriptive than it is technically the case. There are powers the park board specifically has, and so I don't think that part of the statute limits the role of the park board, but that needs to be looked into further. I would say that.
Is there any reason to believe that the Parks Board or the Parks Board would object to a project like this?
I don't know of any reason. The one concern I think the park board and the commissioners may have is the long-term nature. And so that's going to, those concerns, I think will be there. I think they can be addressed, but that's the only potential issue I see right now.
Okay.
I think
I would say-
the long-term nature of it is a positive personally. And I
Well, it
understand
can
that
be.
the park board
Yeah.
may think differently, but to me, the way Mike has kind of set it up is exactly how it should work for generations to come, so it's not just for Mike's kids or grandkids, it's for their kids and their kids' grandkids. And it's all set up for years and years to come where, you're going to have this amazing facility and you're not going to have to revisit it as in depth in our lifetime, hopefully, would be my goal.
And I think the concerns the park board's had in the past is usage as a public park, to make sure it's at least available for all to rent and to use. And I know Cutters in the past have wanting, which particular use agreements or reduced rental fees and things like that, but those things that we can work out, I'm sure.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I'd like to take into consideration is if we are able to make the kind of investment that I'm talking about, then obviously we would like some sort of credit for that in terms of from a financial standpoint anyway. But we can address those things. What I'll do is I'll get together the material that I have. I'll try to do a better job of supporting some of the numbers. Again, I've used the information that was provided to me by Field Turf Company. I've also used the information that the engineering firm did on the study of the athletic facility, and that was looking at the drainage, the irrigation, and lighting issues. So I've used those numbers, and I expect that those numbers probably have to be tweaked some based upon what current numbers are. And if it's in like anything else right now, everything's getting rather expensive. So maybe those numbers have changed. So that we'll make sure that we try to get the latest information. And Pete, anything that you can do to help me in that area certainly would be appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's anything, if there's any, especially sports tourism side of things, if there's any numbers that would help for, what tournaments we're losing because we don't have up-to-date facilities, if there's anything with, what tournaments we could be hosting and size and scope with updated facilities, that's easy for me to find. I can also pass along, Sports ETA is kind of our governing body. Sports Event Tourism Association is kind of our governing body, essentially, of tourism professionals in the sports industry. And they just did a study for 2021 that found that youth sports tourism was a $91 billion industry in 2021, with $39 billion in direct spending alone. So those are some good figures, I think, that would help show people how impactful. Again, Cutters youth, local programming is great, but a way to offset the costs on a lot of these major construction programs is to host tournaments that get people from out of town to come pay $800, $900, $1,200 a team to play at your facility for a weekend. So.
Mike, if
Yeah.
I can, one other thing, I am very impressed with your proposal and hopeful that it is successful. But as a matter of clarification, I do feel like I should ask you, to what extent is the Cutters Board familiar with the specifics of this proposal as it stands and on board with it? Obviously, that's going to be important from your end. And I don't know that you've directly addressed that.
Well, what I have done is that, and Sophia, you can chime in here, is that I've actually presented this information twice to the board over the last 6 months. Or maybe, I guess maybe I better say 5 months, okay? So they're familiar with it. Everybody has a copy of the information. They know that I've had conversations with the Field Turf people. And that we've had conversations with the financing arm as well. We've been a little preoccupied with a few other events within the Cutters organization here over the last 3 or 4 months. So we've spent some time in those areas. But my discussion with the board has been is that I wanted us to put together and begin our capital campaign beginning with this next program year, which begins in July. So I'm gearing up for that. There's still a lot of there's still, Kevin, there's still a lot of specifics that I've got to put in, just as I would for all of you folks. And so everybody's going to be waiting for that information as well. And then we just have to sit down and figure out, myself and our director of development and whoever our executive director is going to be, and our director of coaching, we've got to sit down and look at, what is realistic in terms of events, what can we do in the future. And so there's a number of things that we still got to work out. So with that being said, I think the board has a fair amount of knowledge of what we're doing. And we do have a committee that deals with this. Sophia is a part of that, as well as several other members on the board. So I think the board is up to date as we can be at this point in time. Like I said before, we took a break because we had some other issues within the club that we've been dealing with. I think we're at the point now where those are going to be behind us, hopefully fairly soon, and that we can move forward with our capital campaign.
Now, Mike, is the board leaning toward, because Kevin doesn't know about the proposal to Bloomington Parks and Recreation. Do you know if the Cutters Board is leaning toward funding items for Bloomington Parks?
No, I have no idea which way they would like to go. Just so everybody knows is that we are been looking at how we can better support some of our age groups by using remote areas or remote, I shouldn't say remote, I should say facilities that are maybe closer to maybe the east side or the north side or whatever. So we have had discussions with the city about that, and we had talked to them about potentially upgrading portions of Alcott, because we use Alcott during the summer to do camps, and during the fall and spring to do some of our training, both for our travel program as well as for our rec program. And we had originally looked at Thompson Park as a possibility. And they indicated that they weren't interested in doing anything with Thompson Park. And then they brought up Winslow as a possibility, and we've looked at that. And so we have had some discussions with them, but in the case of the city, anything that we do there is probably only going to involve one facility, like one area.
Okay.
And would be
Well,
equivalent to
that's
a
fine.
soccer
And
field.
that's certainly your prerogative, and I don't see any problem with your working with the city on to that extent.
good.
I guess what I was looking for, and I think you said it in so many words, but correct me if I'm wrong. At this point, could you characterize the Cutters Board as being supportive of this proposal without having actually voted to approve it? Are
Yes.
they supportive of this proposal?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's what I was looking
Sophia,
for.
do you want to
That's what
say
I'd
anything
like to-
about that?
Yeah, I was going to add, I think, Mike, you've done an excellent job of being pretty transparent in the process that you've taken to gather this info. I think we're all pretty up to date, and we do have a meeting tomorrow where they'll probably even get this topic will get some airtime in our board meeting tomorrow.
Okay. Well, I think I would like to report that the Cutters Board is supportive of this, you're being your proposal for the most part, but the board's behind it, and that will make a difference too. I mean, I think the park board would like to see some consistent effort moving in a certain direction, as opposed to just a bunch of ideas thrown at them and then taken back and something new come up, proposed. So,
Well, I think we've narrowed down. The fields are a real concern to us. Okay. And this spring was another reason why fields are a concern to us, because we lost a significant portion of our community soccer season because of not being able to play because of wet fields. And we had to make a number of adjustments as far as the travel program was concerned. We can typically get those games in one way or another, whether we play during the week or whatever. But with the community soccer program, we don't have as much flexibility. And we also lose a lot of kids when we try to run the program past the Memorial Day weekend and actually past the last day of school closing. So we had a real problem this spring with the fields, as we have had in the past few springs as well, in getting our season in. And we're probably at a point where just for this season alone, we're probably going to have to refund some of the money that we received in fees because we weren't able to give people the product that we indicated that we were going to give them for the fees that they paid. So fields are really a concern to us. Okay. And if we can't come up with an agreement, to address the problems that we have right now, then we're going to have to look other ways. And I want us to fix what we have, because we have an excellent facility. If you just kind of look at it from the top, everything looks great. But when you have to deal with it on a day-to-day basis, it becomes a problem, because we're not dealing with the water issue that we have out there. Okay, so that's where we are.
So I'd say for the June meeting, we will put the items that Mike that you produced for us, and also we can have you on the agenda too, so you can actually talk to the board. Is that what you expect, Kevin? Or to talk?
It's up to Mike whether he wants to be there. I mean, I just want to bring the board up to date that, we have some, a working proposal that's going forward, and here are the basic elements of it.
Yeah.
Is what I want to tell them. Now, I do think it would be helpful to report to the board about the problems of this spring's soccer programs on the facilities. I think the board may benefit from a reminder that we have I don't know if I'd call it an urgent need, but we have an absolute need to do something, because as much as everybody's trying to make those fields workable, if they're not available 50% of the time or whatever for use, that's not a situation that can be sustained.
Right.
Am I correct? The June meeting would be June 15th? The third Wednesday? Is that when the Parks Board meets?
Correct, June 15th.
So, Mike, I have to run. I'm sorry, Cheryl, I know you've had your hand up for a minute, but I would be happy to also attend and help with any of the
Logistics.
proposal of, and then just be available to answer any questions. Why not have us there and we can.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we'll
that's great.
work through everything. Thank you, Sophia, for showing up.
Yeah, thank you all. Have a good one. It's a
Cheryl?
nice.
Oh, yes, thank you. Cheryl, your hand's up. Did you want to speak?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I didn't see your hand. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I have three things that are really for everybody. The first is when you're getting financial cost estimate, to have a firmer understanding of the cost involved with the turf or whatever. If you're looking at contractual arrangements, it really is good to lay out that you have three, if that's possible, that you have three different estimates that you've secured. And I think this just is good business for Parks Board and for cutters and for county government. The second thing is that if you're going to be making part of your proposal the tourism effects of these soccer field improvements, I hope you'll be consulting with Mike McAfee at Visit Bloomington. When I was on the Convention and Visitor Center Commission, Mike talked a number of times about how valuable it would be to be able to host soccer tournaments. And Mike might actually have some numbers on.
That's Pete.
Yeah, sure. I'm Mike's
Yeah.
very much in the loop. I'm the director of sports development here at Visit Bloomington.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I didn't know your title.
No, not a problem.
I'm so glad to tell you how important you guys are.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and then one other financial matter, and this is for Cutters. Organizations have found it to be helpful to set up an endowment with the community foundation. This really doesn't cost a lot to get started. There isn't a cost involved, and it has some benefits of people bequeathing funds to various organizations that they might be interested in. It helps people set up their planned giving. So does Cutters already have a community foundation account?
No,
No. Have you ever talked with anybody there?
no.
We can get Mike set up to chit chat with them.
How, other than somebody might want to bequeath something, how do we benefit by having an endowment?
You have a benefit by just advertising to the community that you have this endowment and its goal is for X, Y, and Z. You can say turf for soccer field improvements, whatever. But it just helps donors have great confidence in your organization as one that is going to continue to operate, and that that their donation will actually be an investment that will carry on.
Okay.
Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody, for all
Okay.
your work on this.
Does anyone have anything else before we conclude? Mike, okay.
I'm
Molly,
fine.
do you have anything? You're good?
I'm good. And I'll
Okay.
look into who needs to be a party of the agreement for you guys.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. If nothing else, well, I guess we didn't set up a meeting for next time. Does anyone want to pick a date, or do you just want me to send something else out again?
I wouldn't mind circling back at the end of June after the park board meeting and, you know, all that kind of stuff shakes out. It might not be a bad idea before the 4th of July
Okay.
holidays and all that kind of stuff gets rolling.
Okay, I'll start
end of June.
looking, yeah, okay, I'll start, I'll send some stuff out next week and see what everyone's schedule's like. How's that?
Yeah.
Good.
Hey, Mike, this is unrelated. Is Troy still with you guys?
No.
Okay. I'll talk to you at some point. 3v3 Live wants to do another event here, so we
Okay.
can. I'll get with you offline.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, if not, I'll talk to you soon, Mike, okay?
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Good night.
Well,
Bye.
Goodbye. Sorry. See y'all.